We're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say, you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
Everybody, welcome to another session of the Bucknell Head Coaches Panel. It's an opportunity for us during these trying and tough times to hear from our head coaches about how they're doing and how our student athletes are doing in each of their respective programs. These sessions are being brought to you by our corporate partners and friends at Geisinger. We really want to thank Geisinger for everything they're doing each and every day, themselves out on the front line for ourselves, the community, our student athletes, and everyone involved in the pandemic. Today's panel has 4 head coaches on it, and it features a good mix of some of our most veteran coaches, along with some of our newer coaches. So I'll start with introductions first, and our most veteran of our coaching staff on the panel is Kevin Donner. Kevin is in his 19th season as the head coach of our men's and women's cross-country track and field programs. Kelly Cook just finished her 5th season as a head coach of our women's soccer program. Dave Cecchini, I guess, Dave, if we add the spring that you were able to work and the fall that you got in this fall, you've got 1 full season under your belt at this point. So really a year and a half for Coach Cecchini. And Trevor Woodruff, head coach of our women's basketball program, didn't quite get to finish, unfortunately, your first season at the helm of the Bison women's basketball program. Again, I thank each of you guys for taking the time out today. We'll ask each of you a few questions, and if there are things that I think of or that you think of that I don't mention, feel free to add that as we move along through the panel. So the first question for all of you is, and again, for every program, it's going to be a different answer. Where were you when you got the word that your season was either coming to an end during your championship part of your season or your non-traditional part of your season if you were a fall sport? And how did you then relay that information? Was that to tell your team? And Coach Donner, we'll start with you as the veteran coach on the panel.
Yeah, well, we were actually on spring break. I give my kids spring break to do whatever they want. And we had fortunately finished our indoor season. And when we get back from spring break, we get going with the outdoor. So I think it was a Wednesday or Thursday when we found out things were canceled. And then, President Brodman, told the students they had to come and move out as soon as they can. So even though we were technically in season, I never had closure with my team. They kind of came and went throughout that next week, and a bunch of them stopped by individually, but we did not have an opportunity to address our team. And I think most of the other spring sports were with their team, either on a spring break trip or they're on campus practice. So they had an opportunity to address their team before they left. And of course, the winter sports and fall sports, I believe, had an opportunity to address their team, obviously, much earlier. So we were kind of, I think we were the only team that never really had closure on our season. So I was at home when I got it. And then I got text message after text message, email after email. And if you remember right, it went in phases. They were going to allow the spring sports to come back, but the students not to. And I thought, wow, okay, that might work out pretty good for us, And then literally, 10 hours later, when the Ivy League made their announcement, I knew we were next. Once the Ivy League made the announcement, I knew the Patriot League was going to follow, and a few hours later, they did. And then, after that, I think it was the weekend came, and I just kind of went in the office and told kids that I would be in for a couple hours. I got permission, from our athletic director to do that, and kids came individually, but I did not get to see all of them. So that was pretty tough. Our seniors took it pretty tough, but at least they got an indoor season in. They missed the outdoor, but, missing all the intangibles, the senior toast, the graduation, all the culture of the program, the culture of the university. That's the stuff that they miss the most.
And Kelly, you obviously had finished your fall season, so you were in your non-traditional. How did it go for you in your program?
Yeah, I think the first piece was we had actually a junior, Jenna Merrick, studying abroad in Italy. And that was kind of the start, I would say, of kind of the wave of events, was when Bucknell decided that all of the students studying abroad in Italy would be returning home. So we were in the process of trying to figure out whether she could come back to Bucknell at what point, if she'd be eligible to play in spring matches. So this was early on, prior to the decisions made by Bucknell. So, fast forward to spring break, we got word, as all the coaches did, and we touched base with our student athletes right away, both in a group me and an email, just to touch base and let them know kind of what was going on, and we're here for them. And for us, I think that unlike the spring sports and unlike the winter sports that lost significant games and championships, we were fortunate enough, our seniors got to play their final season. And missing this spring is unfortunate in regards to, it's a huge impact for our younger players in their development, their opportunity to play spring games. We had 5 matches, including Pittsburgh, Penn State, and others that we had to cancel. So great opportunity for us to improve as a team. But I think the group understood, and we're obviously very happy that they were able to play their seasons this past fall. So.
And Dave, I'd imagine the football program situation was similar to women's soccer. You got your competitive season in, but again, you lose a very important spring football season.
Right. Actually, when I first got the word, it was from my wife. She was the head women's tennis coach. She was out in California on spring break with her team. She called me up and said, "Hey, we're flying back now. We've been given our marching orders, and the only place we can land close to campus is Baltimore. So Bucknell Transportation, pick up a van and drive to pick us up, because we don't have anything, we don't have any way to get from the airport to the hotel." So I found myself kind of digesting the news as I was making the drive down to the airport. So, but you're exactly right. It was a challenge with it happening in spring ball, not being able to get together. I was hoping to have a team meeting before, at least when our players came back on campus to move out of their dorms. We weren't able to do that as well. So that certainly was rough. And you're exactly right when it comes to missing. We get 15 practice opportunities. That includes the spring game at the end, and that would have been this past Saturday. Would have been our spring game, and that was tough. Particularly with the incoming freshman sophomore class that would have had their first spring ball here at Bucknell. They really grow during those 15 opportunities. They've physically gotten bigger, stronger, faster through an off-season strength and conditioning program, and they've gotten much more comfortable with life at college, and much more comfortable with the offensive and defensive schemes. And they've been robbed of that opportunity, those 15 practices, to really move up the depth chart, to gain confidence in themselves, and being able to grow in those 15 opportunities. So that's.
And Trevor, I know for any of our student athletes and any of our coaches, it was a difficult situation, but for your program, it had to just be gut-wrenching. And obviously I'll let you speak as to where exactly you guys were and what you were preparing to do when you found out the news.
Yeah, so, very unique. Obviously, we had just walked off the floor. We were still with our team, preparing for the conference semifinal game that night. Holy Cross was here in Lewisburg in a hotel, and we finished walkthrough, had a phone conversation with Jermaine, the athletic director, and he said that there was going to be a league-wide athletic directors meeting. I think it was maybe at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. And they would know shortly after that what the news would be. In my gut, I kind of knew, like Coach Donner had mentioned, the Ivies had already pulled the plug. A lot of the conference tournaments around the country were just starting. It turned the TV on, and the Big East was pulling the plug. And kind of domino effect across the country. So I had a feeling what was coming, but once they got off their call and I was able to connect with Jermaine and he gave me the news, we immediately called everybody back to the locker room. And I think once the team got that text that, hey, let's get together, we've got some news, they knew what it was going to be. So that was a tough conversation. Obviously, we went from the excitement of preparing for the conference semifinal to, okay, the conference tournament is over. At that point, though, there was some hope that there may be an NCAA tournament. And since we won the regular season, we would be the ones representing the Patriot League. So we still had that as a potentially positive event if they were going to have the NCAA tournament. In short order, though, that was then canceled. And, and that was it. So we went from, 12:30 in the afternoon, we got a game tonight, to 2:30 in the afternoon. Okay, the season's over. Get your stuff. You got to be out of the dorm. And so that's just the abruptness of it. I think was the difficult part. And at that point, nobody knew it was going to be what it has become. The Patriot League canceled and everybody was like, boy, they're crazy. What are they doing? And you look back now and it's like, man, that was the least of the issue. So it was challenging. We gathered the team that night. We had a team dinner just so we could say our goodbyes. A bunch of families were in town for the game. So we had some parents that were able to attend kind of the Last Supper, so to speak. And everybody got to say their piece. We got to put all the love on our seniors that we could. And but then that was it. Within a couple of days, everybody was gone, and now it's Zoom conferences and text messages, just like everybody else.
So Trevor just mentioned the seniors again, and this goes hand in hand with that experience. Obviously, for any student athlete to lose their season is dramatic, but for the seniors, it's almost twice as bad, obviously. What have any of you been able to do to celebrate your seniors? And I know we can start with Kelly, because I know you were able to do something this past weekend for your seniors.
I think we typically have our banquet for the end of the season. Even though we're a fall sport, we usually celebrate our fall season in the spring after our spring season concludes. It's kind of a nice weekend. We do our banquet. We do an alumni game on typically the last Saturday. So this past Saturday would have been that Saturday that we would have celebrated our banquet and alumni game. So we decided to attempt a Zoom banquet to honor the seniors, to celebrate this season. And going into it, when I started planning for it, I wasn't really excited about it. I didn't think it would be very personal, and I thought it would lack that excitement and emotion that an in-person banquet would normally have. But at the same time, I couldn't imagine sending a senior class off without celebrating them and recognizing them, and also the 2019 season. So my assistants and I put together, graphics, a highlight video, and we're able to honor the seniors and hand out the 2019 season awards virtually, and got great feedback from parents. We had every player on the call, as well as most of the parents from our group, and really enjoyed the process of it. And actually, there was quite a bit of emotion, I think, in the Zoom call from both players, parents, and the coaching staff, for sure. So, wanted to do something to send them on their way, and that's what we came up with, and really happy we did it.
And I know Coach Cecchini was able to have closure with yours. You had your banquet at the end of the season, as you normally do, but Coach Donner, you're in a little bit of a different situation because you have more than a handful of seniors and a large program. So what are you possibly thinking that you might do to put some closure on the year for your students?
Well, I don't think I'll put closure on it. I've been just emailing them a lot, trying to keep morale up. I'm sending out this day in Bison track and field. I look up some old results, like April 27th, 1984, so-and-so did this at the Penn Relays. But last week, I had a pretty good idea. I was watching, I think it was Arkansas's basketball coach simulated a practice by himself while he's on the floor yelling at kids. And I thought, that sounds kind of fun. So last Sunday, we were supposed to have the Bucknell Team Challenge, and it was supposed to be an alumni weekend where we're going to celebrate some, championship teams. But our last home meet's always senior day. So what I did is Rob Giussani came out, and I did I guess you would say a simulated team meeting prior to the meet, with me basically talking to myself to the bleachers where the kids would be sitting. And then I said, all right, let's go to a track. And then we took a video of the empty track, the empty shot put circle, the empty runway, everything empty. And then we had a post-meet meeting, and I talked about the meet and talked about, get ready for exams. We'll pick a Patriot League lineup in 2 weeks and stay focused. Spring fever's coming up, stay out of trouble, the usual. And then we had our senior day where I went out and Rob pretended to be the PA announcer, and he named every senior. And I pretended that they came and shook my hand and said something about each kid, and then ended it. So it was actually 15 minutes, and I sent it out to the team, and oh my God, I got some, great feedback. Some kids were like, Coach, that's spot on, man. We felt we were right there. Other kids were laughing. Some kids were crying. The senior day got to them. And so I think I hit every emotion with it. It was meant just to be kind of funny, but we hit every emotion. So it'll be up on social media. I just did it as a video, and I sent it to the team, and I sent it to JT. I'm not sure he did anything with it yet, but it's pretty funny. You guys would enjoy it.
That's a very inventive way to handle it.
Yeah, obviously you have a little time on my hands. That's what a few people said.
So, Trevor, one of the things we've been talking about is communication about what happened. How have you been communicating during this whole pandemic with your student athletes? Not just yourself, but also your assistant coaches. Have you divided that communication up, set schedule? How are you making them feel as much a part of the program from at home as they would have been if you were dealing with them every day there at Bucknell?
Right. So that's the challenge we're all facing, right? It's continuing to foster that community feel, that team feel. And I don't think we're doing anything different than anyone else. So we have bi-weekly team meetings. The whole group, the whole coaching staff, strength and conditioning has been involved, has been up to this point involved in those meetings as well. And we have weekly quote unquote academics / positional meetings. So I'll run the team meeting, but then the weekly positional meetings / academic meetings are with my assistant coaches. I'm not usually there. I like to give them time with the student athletes to build their own relationships outside of maybe what we have as a group. And so they're doing that. And then I'm trying to walk a little bit. And so every day that I'm out and about, I'm trying to call 2 or 3 kids just to have personalized individual conversations. And that's with our current players, that's with our incoming class, with recruits in the following class 21. So it's just constant conversations. And for the most part, outside of our team meetings, nothing is basketball related. It's all, how are you? How's your life? How you holding up? What do you need from us? Those kind of conversations. And, really just trying to be good people, good neighbors, as opposed to good basketball coach at this point.
And Kevin, with 140 plus student athletes in your program, I'd imagine that you divide that up among your assistant coaches and spread that responsibility out.
Yeah, I know my assistants and captains have had Zoom meetings with their event groups, like the male sprinters will get together, the female jumpers, the throwers and all that. So they're having those meetings themselves. And then I'm staying in touch with cross country. That's obviously a fall sport. And the training, I think, right now is critical. So I've been focusing a lot on the returning kids, on how their training's going, staying up with that, with them on that. Just trying to keep people engaged. A lot of emails. I'm still a little old school. And, I stay in touch with the team regarding emails. And a lot of kids text me and, things like that. Main thing is I do want to, the seniors to feel engaged. Even though they're technically done, and some of them we've been staying in touch with, and others have kind of moved on. So that's tough. But overall, we're doing what we can do. We're staying in with recruits. We got to make sure our recruits that we do have coming that are still going to come, because the majority of them did not sign a national letter of intent, and we always worry about a fallout, especially now with the high price and what's going to happen in the fall. Is going to start, or are we going to continue to go remote? You might see some fallout, especially with the kids who didn't sign a national letter of intent. So my staff and I are just staying in touch with our recruits individually, just touch base with them through a text or a phone call or an email, just to make sure hey, we're still on, right? that type of thing. So I think that's going to be critical, is retention. With so many kids, we do that by design, having a large team for depth. But some of the kids who didn't compete much in the winter, whether it's an injury or just not making travel squads, then all of a sudden they don't get a spring either. Are they going to come back to the team, next year? So we're trying to, help with retention in that sense.
Dave, I'd imagine with the football program and having similar numbers that you also divide up those responsibilities with your assistant coaches.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. We tried to go through, as I mentioned earlier, with spring ball and the spring game being this past Saturday, or what would have been our spring game. We tried to do our positional meetings just the same as if we were installing an offense or a defense going through 15 practices. So tried to keep as much structure in our players' lives as they possibly could have. We do, during the both in season and out of season, we do a weekly academic check that, again, the players will go to their position coach and sit down and spend some one-on-one time talking about academics and wellness and issues like that. And we continue to do that with our players individually, either through FaceTime or a Zoom meeting or just a phone call. I meet with the Leadership Council every other week, which is a select group of players that have been elected, again, with a team that, during the season is approaching 90 players. I try to narrow that down to 8 or 10, somewhere in that number of representatives that we can discuss issues, topics, leadership things, ideas, suggestions, and so we still are holding those meetings as well. So we just try to keep that sense of normalcy going, even though everybody would be back home in their basement or wherever that might be.
And Kelly, finally for you, how has the communication gone with your student athletes and maybe your incoming recruits as well?
Yeah, so what we tried to make sure there was some kind of Zoom each week, but we tried to vary it up. So you were Zooming with different people. So one week we did it by class, one week we did it by position, one week we did it by just a whole team one. But one of the things that we organized is we developed families within the team. So each with made up of a mix of classes, which also includes our incoming class of 2020 players are mixed into those families. So they were all led by a rising senior, and we're kind of tasked with getting to know that incoming first year, answering questions, whether it was roommates, class selection, meeting with their advisors, all that kind of topics. So we had those little families within the team to help kind of smooth the transition for some of the first years, and also just make sure that the team was staying in well connected. And then the one thing that we did that I think they really enjoyed was we did each week we did challenges, whether it be juggling challenges, running challenges, plank offs, push-up challenges. And we had this large Google Doc, and each week there was 3 or 4 challenges where they had to compete against each other, and they'd plank and get 6 minutes. The next day you looked on the sheet, somebody had planked 7 minutes. So it was a lot of fun. It created some conversations back and forth, and some competition within the group.
So obviously everyone's situation at home is different, and what a student athlete may or may not have access to help them train and stay in shape during this time varies from person to person. We have a great platform at Bucknell called The Bridge, which lets us and the strength and conditioning coaches stay in contact with the student athletes and give them workouts to do. What stories have you guys all heard about maybe how your student athletes are training out of the box, or they're doing something different that you don't see done very often just to get by with what they have? And I'll start with Coach Cecchini and what you've seen from your football guys.
Yeah, so Mark Kulbis, our strength and conditioning coach, did a great job, through the Bridge Athletic program, really individualizing the workouts, finding out, hey, what do you have to work with, if anything? And here's how you can best tailor, what resources you have available to you that's going to optimize, your strength and conditioning growth. So he did a great job of meeting individually with all the players, and we have, again, it ranges from, hey, I've got everything at home, I don't need to worry about that, to I have nothing at home. So some guys are really, really affected by it. We've got guys on our team that are, curling with gallons of milk and using backpacks on their back, doing push-ups to add weight, and finding, unique workarounds to help maximize it. That's on the one end, and the other end is the guy who's working with just about every possible, exercise, bike, treadmill, bench, press, squat, all of those things. They have it, having access to a gym. So it's been a real challenge dealing with, everybody, most people aren't on either extreme, but just about the whole team's in the middle. And again, Coach Kulbis has done a phenomenal job of just tailoring, and the Bridge Athletic program really helps us with that as well.
Trevor, what have you heard from the young ladies on your team in terms of how they're getting by working out?
It's a challenge. I think they feel the challenge. Conversations with some of them, they're looking for ways. It's a little different every day. They're looking for ways to, we did end of year meetings with every kid via Zoom, and it's a challenge to figure out how can we, in addition to the strength part of it and conditioning part, how can we continue to develop skills, because some of them don't have a hoop at their house. They don't have, a driveway. They can't get into the high school gym. The community parks aren't open. So it's the strength and conditioning. It's also skill development that is taking a hit with this. One of the messages we sent to our team was that everybody's having challenges across the country, Patriot League, nationally. But when this is over, somebody's going to be ahead of everybody else, one way or the other. May not be ahead of where you would have been, but can we start from a place where we give ourselves an advantage? So rather than, deal with excuses, let's figure out a way. And so I think, as Coach Cecchini said, there's some creativity involved. And as the old quote goes, if you really want something, you find a way. And if you don't, you find an excuse. And so I think that's where we are in every way, from basketball to, socially and as families. Many of us will come out of this better, some won't. Which do you want to be?
And Kevin, with track and field and cross country, you're talking about a variety of different skills and probably a bunch of different training techniques. How have your student athletes been able to work out at home?
Well, fortunately, the next sport we coach is going to be cross country. Hopefully a camp starting in August. That's not that far from now. So I think my cross-country kids are probably a little more motivated than my track and field kids who don't have a competition till, December. And the beauty of distance running is you can do it anywhere. There's fields, there's roads, there's parks. Some of the parks in the areas are closed, others are not. Some of the tracks are closed, others are not. But there's a place to run everywhere, and you can find it. And what I have found is because we are not in competition, the majority of my kids are training longer and harder than they probably would have if we were in season. So, because there's nothing to really peak for. And it's the only time they get out of the house. And they're following, social distancing rules. And, you can, the beauty of track cross country, it's an individual sport. You can do it by yourself. So I see the majority of my cross country kids are more motivated than I thought they'd be, to be honest. I was worried about that. And they're getting some great runs in, some training in. My sprinters, hurdlers, jumpers, throwers, they're on the bridge program. And like Dave said, some of them have, gyms in their basement. Others are doing it the old Herschel Walker way, 1,000 push-ups a day, and just getting in some work that way. Some people have a place to go throw the shot put. Others are, throwing med balls in their backyard, So they're finding a way. That's the beauty of, if you're dedicated, if you're commitment, you're going to find a way. You can do a lot of different things. And remember seeing the AD at Tennessee, former, who used to coach at Tennessee football. He sent in, I think, an email to the entire football team and talked about Herschel Walker, that he didn't need weights, and he got pretty strong. So, the nice thing is everyone's in the same boat. Nobody's gaining an edge on Bucknell University right now. So you can gain an edge on people, but most likely they're not going to gain an edge on you if you work hard.
And Kevin mentioned August coming rapidly. When August is here, typically you're already playing games. So obviously staying in shape is going to be a concern for you guys as the fall rapidly approaches and the summer comes quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the summer for us is so crucial. I mean, we get started, if all goes well, we typically move back to campus August 3rd, and 12 days later, we're competing. So if you're not doing the work over the summer, you really put yourself at a disadvantage. And kind of like Trevor said, all the teams in NCAA right now are facing the same challenges, and the ones that find creative ways to move forward and to set soccer as a priority are the ones that are going to have that success in the fall. And so we've reiterated that to our team multiple times. One creative thing I'm seeing our team doing is using their little brothers and sisters. I can't tell you how many of them are going out with or older brother or sister, or even mom or dad. Mom and dad's throwing balls at them, so they're having to receive out of the air. Little brothers playing 1v1 in the backyard. So, not your traditional ways of training, but again, using that creativity to make the best out of a situation. And again, like Trevor had mentioned, teams are going to hopefully get going in the fall, and the teams that take advantage of this time now and use creative methods. David Mattson, our assistant coach, videoed himself each week in his basement doing wall ball exercises and sent them out to the teams, sent them out to our team to be able to work on things. So, doing the best we can. Obviously, soccer is a game that involves a lot of people with 11 people on the field. So that part of it is something we can't replicate, but the individual skills and the fitness, the commitment to those two are things that we can tackle right now, and that's what we're trying to do.
So my final question for everybody today, and again, I really appreciate you all taking the time to join us. The world of recruiting, right now it's upside down. How are each of you handling that? There are no contests, there's no high school athletics going on at all. There are no showcases for most of the summer. There are no camps. How do you handle it for your respective sport? And Coach Cecchini, we'll start with you.
Yeah, for us, the month of May, traditionally in the recruiting cycle is the most critical month. You get a chance to go out and meet with the coaches in the schools, get transcripts, evaluate huddle film. With the beauty of the internet, you can still evaluate people. So we're not any farther behind in terms of an athletic evaluation, aside from the fact that you haven't had that one-on-one contact with coaches. We've tried to do everything that we can, since we can't bring the recruits to Bucknell on our campus for either official or unofficial visits. So we're trying to do our best to bring Bucknell to them. So sending them personalized video messages that they can get on YouTube, things that we talk about that normally would happen when they came or would come for an official visit or an unofficial visit. Here's a virtual tour. Here's a discussion of the academic services that we have available. We talk about our philosophy of our program. And so we try to do little things like that to take advantage of the technology that we have to be able to do these things from our own home. Conversely, we also are taking an old school approach. So as we talk about using at our disposal when it comes to recruiting, I also want to kind of go back to some old school things, back that you did in the 80s and 90s before the internet got to the point where, social media became the primary ways of communicating with the recruits. So we're doing a lot of old school snail mail, letter writing, trying to make things as personalized as they possibly could be, knowing that, you have prospects in a sense at their home. So getting something in the mail is a little bit different than just being on their phone all day long as well. So we're just trying to do things to keep it fresh, keep it different, and differentiate ourselves.
And Trevor, what's going on in the world of basketball and the recruiting scene?
Yeah, so it's really a free-for-all. I wish we could get through this thing quick because it's not easy. We essentially are, in terms of seeing and evaluating potential student athletes, it's all videotape at this point. In our world, we get a weekend in April, a weekend in May, and then nothing until July. So our fingers are crossed that July is still a possibility. There's been some emails going out from event coordinators that they're still under the impression that they'll be able to hold these events. We're talking about thousands and thousands of kids under one roof. So I don't know how realistic that is, but they have not canceled them yet. I don't know how realistic it is that coaches would even, if they have the event, are coaches going to then spread out across the country and go see these kids? I don't know if that's realistic. So we're wait and see. All evaluations are on film at this point. We are essentially focused on all class of 21 and 22 kids. Our 20 class is done. And similar to the football guys, it's a lot of social media, just trying to draw attention to ourselves, present ourselves in the best light possible. We've developed a PowerPoint presentation that we take to all the kids, almost like an in-home visit without actually being there. We do handwriting as well. I'm big on that, as Coach mentioned. So it's really just trying to take ourselves to them. And it's been crazy, the amount of folks who are now putting themselves out there who wouldn't have in the past because they knew they would have these events to showcase themselves. But the amount of film that we are getting at our fingertips, quite frankly, has been overwhelming. And coaches will send it, and I'll respond, Coach, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And it may be 3 or 4 days before I can get to that film because there's so much, even with 3 or 4 people watching it. So it's a lot. It does give us something to do, so that's good. But we're just going to keep grinding away. And ultimately, you want to find the right kids, and the only way to do that is to connect and communicate and have conversations. So that's what we're doing.
And Kelly, how's it going in the world of women's soccer?
I think similar. in terms of the amount of film we're getting. Film for soccer is pretty tough to evaluate in terms of level of play and things like that. So, we are watching it and doing the best we can with it. Todd, the one thing I would have to say on the positive in all of this is, perhaps because we haven't been out on the road and we're able to evaluate like we normally would in the spring and run our teams and spring seasons, I've had a chance to get to know some of the recruits and their families a little bit more on a personal level than I have maybe in prior years. So taking the time to get on the phone more and spend more time with the individuals that, we're interested in. Thankfully, we had a clinic in February and we have a good jump on our class of 2021s. And we right now cannot communicate with our 22s yet. So the remaining 21s that we're targeting, I've had a good opportunity to really get to know them and hear from them. So that is, I think, one positive in all of this. But I do feel like I'm not prepared as I would be for the class of 22 because of all the spring events that were canceled. Where I would have evaluated 22s. We have pretty much a wide open recruiting window, unlike kind of a basketball where we can be on the road every weekend with the exception of 1 month in December. So we missed out on a lot of opportunities and, hopeful that perhaps maybe some one-day clinics do happen this summer or next fall where we can get out and evaluate some of those 22s and kind of finish up our 21s.
And Kevin, we started today's session with you and we'll end it with you. So
all right.
How's it going with you?
Well, for track and field and cross country, the junior year of high school is a critical year. So much can happen between the sophomore and the junior year for the good and for the bad. So we specifically focus on the juniors. And unfortunately, a lot of juniors didn't get an opportunity to compete this year. The ones who did indoor track and field, we identified a lot of those, a lot who did cross country in the fall, were able to identify those, but there's a big cross section of athletes that do not compete in indoor track and field. So those are the ones that are going to have the hardest time. We're going to have to use the sophomore, their times, their marks, but once again, a lot can happen for the good or the bad. So it's going to be pretty tough this year for track and field, especially for the schools that have real good academic standards, that have deadlines. The schools that have a rolling admission are going to be at an advantage. That's for sure for our sport. But the Ivies, the Patriot Leagues, a lot of the schools that have January 1st deadlines to apply, it's going to be tough on them. So we're going to have to call some coaches. We're going to have to find those diamonds in the rough. Obviously, we have the kids who did indoor. We have the kids who did cross country. But once again, it's only about 60% of the athletes. So there can be if there's any year that there's going to be some missed prospects that our late bloomers are going to develop, this is the year. And once again, the schools that have a rolling admission are going to be at a huge advantage. So we're going to have to work hard, my staff, to try to yield these indoor kids that competed indoor and cross country this year. Luckily, we have a pretty good database to work with right now. But it's going to be an obstacle recruiting this year for Bucknell University track and field. We're going to have to go at it hard.
Well, again, guys, I want to really thank you for taking the time out today. Our panel, Kevin Donner, Trevor Woodruff, Dave Cecchini, and Kelly Cook. Really appreciate the thoughtful answers you gave, and it gave us a lot of insight to what's happening with each of you and your programs right now. Please stay healthy and safe, as well as your families. I know all of you have kids, and that's challenging in itself these days when you don't have any school in session. You got to deal with that at home as well. So thanks again for being here today. And for those of you that watched at home, stay safe and stay strong.
See everybody.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.